Dramily.com, unlimited drama series.
The red wine hit the white tablecloth like blood spatter at a crime scene. I watched it spread dark tendrils, reaching across expensive linen, while my wife Stephanie unwrapped the jewelry I'd bought her just 3 hours earlier. "You're pathetic," she said, not even looking up from the Tiffany box. "A worthless loser who'll never amount to anything." The Halloween party buzzed around us. Couples in matching costumes laughed and danced, while my marriage died in real time. Stephanie wore the black dress I'd complimented that morning. But now, she was wrapping my gifts in tissue paper. "These are perfect for David," she continued, holding up the diamond earrings. "He actually deserves nice things, David Richardson." Her boss at Meridian Financial, 45 years old, divorced twice, drove a Porsche he couldn't really afford. I'd been watching him for 6 months. "David's everything you'll never be," Stephanie sneered, finally meeting my eyes. "Rich, powerful, a real man. Not some nobody analyst pushing papers around." I let candy from the decorative bowl scatter across the wine-stained table. A miniature Snickers bar landed in the spreading red pool. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I'm leaving you," she announced. "Tonight. David's picking me up in an hour." Around us, the party continued. Someone had dressed as a vampire. Another couple argued near the punch bowl. Normal Halloween drama. Nothing like the theater playing out at our table. "I emptied our joint account," Stephanie added, checking her phone. $47,000. "David says we need seed money for our future together." I nodded slowly, watching chocolate dissolve in wine. "That's nice." "That's all you have to say?" Her voice rose. "I just destroyed your pathetic little life, and you're worried about candy?" "The candy's fine," I said. "It's Halloween. Things are supposed to get messy." She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. Or maybe I was finally thinking clearly for the first time in months. My phone buzzed. Text message from an encrypted number. "Package delivered. Ready to proceed on your signal." I smiled and took another sip of wine. The good bottle. The one I'd been saving for a special occasion. "You're insane," Stephanie muttered, shoving the wrapped gifts into her purse. "Completely insane." "Probably," I agreed. "But I'm consistent." She stood up, smoothing her dress. "David will be here any minute. Don't wait up." "Wouldn't dream of it." She walked away without looking back. I watched her navigate through the crowd, already texting someone. Probably David, telling him the deed was done. The pathetic husband was history. I finished my wine and checked my watch. 11:47 p.m. In exactly 13 minutes, the real show would begin. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Leon Martinez, my contact at the FBI Financial Crimes Unit. "Blake, we're greenlit for Monday morning. Richardson's been moving money through shell accounts all week. Your wife's withdrawal triggered every flag we set." I typed back. "She doesn't know what she just walked into." "Neither does he. This is going to be beautiful." Beautiful wasn't the word I'd use. Justice, maybe. Poetic irony, definitely. But beautiful? That remained to be seen. The vampire from across the room approached my table. "Hey, you okay? Your wife looked pretty upset." "She's having a revelation," I said, "and sometimes the truth hurts." "Want to talk about it?" I looked at the wine-stained tablecloth, the scattered candy, the empty chair where my wife of 8 years had just torched our marriage. "You know what? I think I'm good." The vampire nodded and wandered off. Smart guy. Some conversations are better avoided. I pulled out my real phone. Not the basic model Stephanie knew about, but the encrypted device the Bureau had issued me 18 months ago, when this operation began. The screen showed 47 new messages from my team. Subject has made contact with primary target. Financial transfers confirmed. Ready for Phase 2 implementation. I scrolled through the updates, each one building the case that would destroy David Richardson's carefully constructed house of cards. Stephanie had just made herself an accessory to securities fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. The irony was delicious. She thought she was escaping to a better life. Instead, she'd walked straight into a federal investigation that had been building for 2 years. My name isn't really Blake Foster, mild-mannered financial analyst. It's Blake Foster, Special Agent, FBI Financial Crimes Division. The analyst part was true, but I analyzed criminal enterprises for the Justice Department. Stephanie never bothered to ask what I actually did at work. She assumed it was boring, meaningless paper pushing. In reality, I'd been building cases against white-collar criminals who thought they were untouchable. David Richardson was my white whale. Meridian Financial looked legitimate on the surface, but underneath it was a Ponzi scheme that had stolen nearly $300 million from pension funds and retirement accounts. Ordinary people who trusted their life savings to a man who spent their money on sports cars and mistresses. Getting close to Richardson had been impossible until Stephanie started working at Meridian as his executive assistant. She'd mentioned him constantly, always impressed by his expensive suits and flashy lifestyle. I'd encouraged her admiration, knowing it would eventually lead somewhere useful. I hadn't expected it to lead to adultery, but criminal investigations rarely follow neat timelines. The party was winding down. Couples gathered their coats and said goodbyes. I helped clean up, making small talk with neighbors who had no idea they'd just witnessed the beginning of the largest financial fraud case in state history. "Thanks for hosting," I told the Hendersons. "Great party." "Sorry about Stephanie," Mrs. Henderson whispered. "She seemed really upset." "She'll be fine," I said. "Sometimes people need to make their own mistakes." Outside, I could see David's Porsche idling at the curb. Stephanie climbed into the passenger seat, still clutching her purse full of stolen gifts. They drove off into the night, probably heading to his penthouse apartment downtown. The apartment we'd been surveilling for 3 months. I walked home through empty streets, decorated with jack-o'-lanterns and fake spider webs. Halloween in suburban Ohio. Nothing unusual except for the federal agents, positioned at strategic points along my route, ready to move when the operation kicked into high gear. My house felt different without Stephanie's presence. Quieter, more honest somehow. I poured another glass of wine and sat in my study, reviewing case files that had consumed the last 18 months of my life. Richardson's scheme was elegant in its simplicity. He promised investors guaranteed returns of 15% annually, claiming his success came from proprietary trading algorithms. In reality, he was paying early investors with money from new victims, skimming millions for himself along the way. The classic Ponzi structure, dressed up with modern technology and financial jargon. What made Richardson dangerous wasn't his intelligence. The FBI had encountered smarter criminals. It was his charisma. He could convince anyone of anything, from pension fund managers to lonely executive assistants looking for excitement. Stephanie had fallen for his pitch completely. She genuinely believed he was a financial genius who could provide the luxury lifestyle she'd always wanted. She had no idea she was dating a criminal who would eventually drag her down with him. My phone rang. Leon Martinez, calling from his car. "Blake, they just pulled into Richardson's building. We've got eyes on them through the lobby cameras." "Any unusual activity?" "Nothing yet. But we intercepted some interesting communications earlier today. Richardson's been in contact with offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Looks like he's planning to run. How soon? Could be days, maybe hours. Your wife's withdrawal might have spooked him." I considered this. If Richardson fled the country, we'd lose our chance to recover the stolen money. Hundreds of victims would never see their life savings again. "What do you need from me?" "Keep acting normal. Go to work Monday like nothing happened." Let Richardson think he's in control. "And Stephanie?" Leon paused. "She's made her choice, Blake. What happens next is on her." I hung up and stared at the wine-stained tablecloth I'd brought home from the party. Evidence of the moment my marriage officially ended. Tomorrow I'd throw it away, but tonight it served as a reminder of how quickly life could change. Stephanie thought she'd won. She'd humiliated me publicly, stolen our savings, and run off with a man she believed was superior in every way. In her mind, she'd traded up from a boring husband to an exciting lover who could give her everything she'd ever wanted. She had no idea she'd just destroyed her own life. Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray October sky that makes you question your life choices. I stood in my kitchen, drinking coffee and watching news reports about Halloween vandalism, while my phone buzzed with updates from the FBI surveillance team. Subject spent the weekend at Richardson's penthouse. No unusual movement or communications. Standing by for your signal. I drove to my cover job at Hartwell Analytics, a legitimate financial consulting firm that provided perfect camouflage for my real work. My colleagues knew me as the quiet guy who analyzed market trends and rarely spoke up in meetings. They had no idea I was building federal cases in my spare time. "Blake," my supervisor, Janet Walsh, waved me over as I entered the office. "How was your Halloween?" "Educational," I said. "Very educational." Stephanie feeling better? She seemed pretty upset when she called in sick this morning. I paused, coffee cup halfway to my lips. "She called in sick?" "About an hour ago. Said she had food poisoning from the party." Janet frowned. "You didn't know?" "We're not really communicating right now." Janet's expression shifted to concern. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize." "It's fine," I said. "These things happen." But it wasn't fine. Stephanie calling in sick meant she was planning something. Richardson had probably told her to take time off while he arranged their escape. The timeline was accelerating. I excused myself and called Leon from the parking lot. "They're running," I said without preamble. "How do you know?" Stephanie called in sick. She never takes sick days unless she's actually dying. Richardson must have told her to clear her schedule. "Shit. We're not ready to move yet. We need another 48 hours to coordinate with the Financial Crimes Task Force. Then we better speed things up." Leon was quiet for a moment. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking it's time to rattle Richardson's cage. Make him do something stupid." "Blake, you're not authorized for direct contact with the subject. If this goes wrong, it won't go wrong. Trust me." I hung up before he could object and drove across town to Meridian Financial. The building was a gleaming tower of glass and steel, designed to project success and stability. The kind of place that attracted investors looking for someone else to manage their money. Richardson's office occupied the entire top floor. I'd studied the layout during surveillance, memorizing every exit and security camera. Getting inside wouldn't be difficult. I had legitimate business credentials and a story that would get me past the receptionist. "I'm here to see David Richardson," I told the young woman at the front desk. "Blake Foster from Hartwell Analytics. We spoke last week about portfolio diversification strategies." She checked her computer, frowning. "I don't see an appointment scheduled. He said to drop by any time this week. I was in the building for another meeting and thought I'd stop up." The receptionist hesitated, then picked up her phone. "Mr. Richardson? There's a Blake Foster here to see you." "Yes, from Hartwell." "Okay, I'll send him up." She hung up and smiled. "Elevator to the top floor. He'll meet you in the lobby." Perfect. Richardson's curiosity had just given me exactly what I needed. The elevator ride felt like ascending to a crime scene. Which, in a sense, it was. This building housed one of the largest financial frauds in recent history, and I was about to confront the man responsible. David Richardson was waiting when the doors opened, tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. He extended his hand with the practiced smile of a man who made his living convincing others to trust him. "Blake Foster," he said. "I don't believe we've actually met." "No," I agreed, shaking his hand. "But I feel like I know you." His smile flickered slightly. "How so?" "My wife talks about you constantly. Stephanie Foster. She works for you." The smile disappeared entirely. Richardson's eyes went cold, calculating. He was trying to figure out why his mistress's husband had just shown up at his office. "Stephanie's a valued employee," he said carefully. "Very dedicated." "Oh, she's dedicated, all right. Dedicated enough to empty our joint account for your benefit." Richardson glanced around the elevator lobby, checking for witnesses. We were alone except for security cameras that I knew he monitored personally. I think there's been a misunderstanding, he said. No misunderstanding. She told me everything. How she's leaving me for you. How you're everything I'll never be. Rich, powerful, a real man, I smiled. Her words, not mine. Mr. Foster, I think you should leave. Probably. But first, I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For taking her off my hands. Stephanie's been unhappy for years and I never knew how to fix it. Turns out the solution was simple. Let someone else deal with her. Richardson's confusion was genuine. He'd expected...
He texted at 2 a.m. Leave the door unlocked. You left our door unlocked for him?
Once it was... Watch more on Grammarly.com.
Anger, threats, maybe even violence. Instead, I was acting grateful. You're not upset? He asked. Why would I be upset? You've solved my biggest problem. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. Between you and me, David, marriage is expensive. Stephanie has very expensive tastes. I've noticed. Those gifts she's been bringing home, the jewelry, the designer bags, I was wondering how we could afford all that on my salary. Richardson went very still. What gifts? The ones you've been buying her? The Tiffany earrings, the Louis Vuitton purse, the Rolex watch. I paused. She said you like to spoil the women you care about. I never bought her any of those things. Really? That's strange. She said they came from you, even showed me the receipts. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through photos. Here's the Tiffany receipt. Your credit card number, your signature. Richardson grabbed my phone, staring at the image. His face went white as he recognized his own handwriting. This is impossible, he whispered. I never bought her jewelry. But that's your signature, right? Your credit card? Yes, but... He trailed off, realizing the implications. Someone had been using his credit card to make unauthorized purchases. Someone with access to his wallet and signature. David, I said gently, I think Stephanie's been stealing from you. The elevator dinged and 2 men in dark suits stepped out. FBI agents, though Richardson didn't know that yet. They nodded politely and walked past us toward the office suite. Who are they? Richardson asked, suddenly nervous. No idea. Probably investors, right? You must get a lot of those. Richardson wasn't listening. He was staring at my phone, doing the math. If Stephanie had been forging his signature to buy expensive gifts, what else had she been doing with access to his financial information? I need to check something, he muttered, heading toward his office. Of course. Don't let me keep you. I followed him down the hallway, watching as he fumbled with his key card. The 2 FBI agents had disappeared into a conference room, but their presence had clearly rattled him. Richardson's office was exactly what I'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture, walls covered with awards and photographs of him shaking hands with politicians and celebrities, the kind of decor designed to impress potential victims. He went straight to his computer, pulling up what looked like credit card statements. I positioned myself where I could see the screen, pretending to admire the view of the city. Jesus Christ, Richardson breathed, scrolling through transactions. Tiffany, Louis Vuitton, Nordstrom, Saks Fifth Avenue. He looked up at me. These charges go back months. Thousands of dollars. That's a lot of jewelry, I agreed. Stephanie must really mean something to you. I didn't authorize any of this. But you gave her access to your credit cards? For business expenses only. Lunches, travel, office supplies. I nodded sympathetically. It's hard when someone you trust betrays you. I should know. Richardson was spiraling, realizing that his mistress had been systematically stealing from him while playing the devoted lover. The irony was beautiful. He'd built his fortune by betraying the trust of investors, and now he was experiencing the same violation firsthand. I have to call the police, he said, reaching for his phone. Are you sure that's wise? He paused. What do you mean? Well, if Stephanie's been using your credit cards, the police will want to know how she got access to them. They'll ask about your relationship, where she's been staying, why you gave her financial access in the first place. Richardson's face went pale as he understood the implications. Reporting Stephanie's theft would expose their affair and raise questions about his business practices. Questions he couldn't afford to answer. There has to be another way, he said. Maybe. But first, you might want to check your other accounts. If she's been stealing with credit cards, who knows what else she's been doing? Richardson turned back to his computer, pulling up bank statements and investment accounts. I watched him discover transaction after transaction that he hadn't authorized. Money transfers, wire payments, account withdrawals. All of them legitimate, all of them documented, all of them building the case that would destroy him. This is impossible, he kept saying. She couldn't have done all this. Maybe she had help, I suggested. Someone with more financial experience. Richardson looked at me sharply. What are you implying? Nothing. Just thinking out loud. I checked my watch. I should probably go. Thanks for clearing up the confusion about those gifts. Wait. Richardson stood up, desperation creeping into his voice. You can't tell anyone about this. If word gets out that my assistant has been stealing from me, your secret's safe with me, David. After all, we're practically family now. I left him staring at his computer screen, watching his carefully constructed world collapse one transaction at a time. By evening, he discovered that the unauthorized charges were just the beginning. The real damage was in the offshore accounts, the shell companies, the paper trail that led straight back to his Ponzi scheme. Stephanie thought she'd been clever, skimming money from her wealthy lover. She had no idea she'd been documenting federal crimes that would send them both to prison. Outside Meridian Financial, I called Leon. Phase 2 is complete, I said. Richardson knows about the credit card fraud. How did he take it? About as well as expected. He's panicking, which means he'll make mistakes. And your wife? I looked up at the gleaming tower where my marriage had officially died. She made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Tuesday morning brought the kind of chaos that makes federal agents smile and criminals reach for their lawyers. I was sitting in my kitchen, reading news reports about a routine audit at Meridian Financial, when my phone exploded with notifications. 13 missed calls from Stephanie. I let them ring while I finished my coffee and reviewed the FBI briefing documents Leon had sent overnight. Richardson's panic had triggered exactly the response we'd hoped for. He'd spent Monday evening frantically moving money between accounts, creating a digital trail that would make prosecution simple. The 14th call came at 7:30 a.m. I answered on the 5th ring. Blake! Stephanie's voice was shrill with panic. Thank God you answered. Morning, Stephanie. How's the food poisoning? What? Oh, that. Listen, I need your help. Something terrible is happening. Define terrible. There are FBI agents at David's office. They have search warrants and everything. I made appropriate surprised noises while reviewing surveillance photos of Richardson being escorted from his building in handcuffs. That sounds serious. They think he's been stealing money from investors. It's completely insane. Is it? Of course it is. David's a legitimate businessman. He would never... She stopped, perhaps remembering some of the conversations she'd overheard during their romantic evenings. Never what? Blake, I'm scared. They're asking questions about me, too. About our relationship, about money I've received from David. What kind of money? Just gifts. Normal boyfriend gifts. Jewelry and clothes and things like that. I flipped through photos of receipts totaling nearly $80,000 in fraudulent purchases. That's a lot of gifts. You don't understand. They're treating me like a criminal. They want to know about our joint account, about the money I withdrew for our future together. Ah, I said, that money. Blake, I think I made a mistake. The understatement of the century, but I kept my tone neutral. What kind of mistake? I think David might actually be in trouble. Real trouble? And they think I was helping him. Were you? No, not intentionally. I just did what he asked me to do. Which was? Stephanie was crying now, the reality of her situation finally sinking in. He had me sign some papers, transfer authorizations, account access forms. He said it was for business purposes, but now I think... You think what? I think he was using me to move stolen money. Bingo. The confession Leon needed to complete the conspiracy charges. Stephanie, I said gently, where are you right now? At David's apartment. But I don't think I should stay here. The FBI might come back. They might? Can I come home? Please? I know I said terrible things, but I was confused and scared and David was telling me all these lies about how we'd be rich and happy together. I looked around my empty house, imagining Stephanie's presence filling it again. The thought made me physically ill. I don't think that's a good idea. Blake, please, I'm your wife. You have to help me. Actually, I don't. You made it very clear on Saturday night that our marriage was over. You chose David Richardson over me, remember? I was wrong. I made a horrible mistake. Yes, you did. Several of them, actually. What's that supposed to mean? I could have told her about the federal investigation, about my real job, about the 18 months I'd spent building a case against her lover. Instead, I chose a different truth. It means you're an adult who made adult decisions. Now, you get to face adult consequences. Blake, they're talking about criminal charges. They think I committed fraud. Did you? I don't know. Maybe. David had me do so many things I didn't understand. The line went quiet except for her sobbing. I felt a moment of something that might have been pity, but it passed quickly. Stephanie had chosen greed over loyalty, excitement over stability, lies over truth. The fact that her choices had consequences wasn't my fault. Stephanie, I said finally, you should probably get a lawyer. I can't afford a lawyer. David's accounts are frozen and I don't have any money. What about the $47,000 you took from our joint account? I spent it. David said we needed to invest in our future, so I gave it all to him. Of course she had. Richardson had probably used her money to pay other investors while moving his own assets offshore. Classic Ponzi scheme behavior. Then I guess you have a problem. Blake, please, I'm begging you. I'll do anything. There's nothing I can do, Stephanie. This is bigger than both of us. I hung up and turned off my phone. Leon would want to hear about this conversation, but first I needed to process what had just happened. My wife of 8 years had just confessed to federal crimes while begging me to save her from the consequences of her own actions. The irony was overwhelming. She'd spent Saturday night telling me how pathetic and worthless I was, how David Richardson was everything I'd never be. Now Richardson was in federal custody, and she was calling me for help. I drove to work through morning traffic, listening to radio reports about the major financial fraud investigation unfolding downtown. The reporters didn't have details yet, but they knew something big was happening. Meridian Financial's offices were sealed, Richardson was in custody, and federal agents were executing search warrants across the city. My phone rang as I pulled into the Hartwell Analytics parking lot. Leon Martinez calling from FBI headquarters. Blake, we need to talk. Can you get away from your cover job? What's the situation? Richardson's talking. He's trying to pin everything on your wife. Is that going to work? Probably not. We have too much evidence of his direct involvement. But he's claiming she was the mastermind behind the credit card fraud and money laundering. I thought about Stephanie crying in Richardson's penthouse apartment, terrified of consequences she'd never imagined. She's not smart enough to be a mastermind. We know that. But Richardson's lawyer is good, and they're going to argue that she manipulated him into giving her financial access, then used that access to steal from investors. What do you need from me? Testimony. You're the one person who can speak to her character, her motivations, her actual knowledge of Richardson's business. When? Grand jury convenes Thursday. Can you be there? I looked at the Hartwell Analytics building, thinking about the cover identity I'd maintained for 18 months. After Thursday, Blake Foster, the mild-mannered analyst, would disappear forever. I'll be there. Blake, are you okay with this? I know she's your wife. She was my wife, I corrected. Now she's just another criminal who got caught. I spent the day at my desk, pretending to analyze market trends while actually reviewing the evidence that would destroy the woman I'd once loved. Financial records, surveillance transcripts, recorded phone calls, all of it painting a picture of systematic fraud that had stolen the life savings of hundreds of innocent people. Stephanie had been a willing participant, even if she hadn't understood the full scope of Richardson's crimes. She'd signed transfer authorizations, moved money between accounts, and used her position as his assistant to legitimize transactions that were actually theft. The fact that she'd been motivated by greed rather than criminal intent wouldn't save her. Federal prosecutors don't care about motivation when the evidence is this clear. My phone buzzed with another call from Stephanie. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her increasingly desperate message. Blake, please call me back. The FBI came to David's apartment. They have a warrant for my arrest. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. Please, if you ever loved me, help me. I deleted the message and went back to work. At 5 o'clock, I drove home through streets that felt different somehow. Cleaner, maybe. Or maybe that was just my imagination. The psychological relief of watching justice finally catch up with people who'd thought they were untouchable. My house felt peaceful without Stephanie's presence. No tension, no arguments, no constant dissatisfaction with our life together. Just quiet rooms and the satisfaction of a job well done. I poured myself a glass of the good wine, the bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion, and sat in my study, reviewing the case files one last time. Tomorrow, Richardson and Stephanie would be formally indicted on federal charges. Bye.